So it is kind of set on that way, but it's not broken down by sort of risk and management assurances, I'm afraid.
Has that been helpful, Andrew?
To be honest, not really, in that I was kind of looking to the future. There'll be a lot of RTPs out there possibly looking at bringing a lot of services in under their own control. And I would imagine that's seen as a risk, and it was to try and get a better understanding of what the potential increases might be for SWestrans if we were to take the same route.
I don't think we can help you with that one at the moment, Andrew. So, yeah, it's kind of
budgeting, Chair.
Sorry, Andrew.
It was just really to try and help us with looking to the future and budgeting.
Have you got a crystal ball? Because I think that's what we would need.
I think so for this job, definitely.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Board members, observers? No? No one else online? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. And that was to note and comment on the external audit plan for 2023-24 in the appendix. We're happy to do that. Yeah, and thank you, Peter, and thank you, Kieran, for your attendance. Now move on to agenda item 5, which is the draft revenue expenditure budget for 2024-25. The report seeks agreement to the draft revenue budget for the financial year 24-25. Janet, do you have anything to highlight or add?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair.
Thank you very much, Janet. Opening up to any comments, questions from board members. Councillor Walters. Keith.
Just a couple of general questions, really. Is there an easy way of seeing how that budget compares to last year's budget, for instance? And secondly, the income that we're getting, the Scottish Government funding, I sort of look back to last year, that seems to be exactly the same. Is that correct, that it's always the same figure? That's the two questions.
Thanks, Keith. Janet?
The Scottish Government funding has been at the same level for a number of years. They don't increase it year on year. I need to look back to the monitoring report. Can I come back to you, Councillor, on that point about this year's budget?
Keith, you want it back in?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and maybe just share that with all board members. That would be appreciated. Thanks, Janet. Councillor Wood. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was on page 2 when we're looking at 3.5, number 8 in the chart. It talks about thereafter these documents should be reviewed on a regular basis. Can we get a defining time on regular basis? Is that monthly, quarterly, or annual?
Janet.
Sorry, Councillor, we're on the monitoring report. Is that?
Oh, sorry. My apologies. It's actually item 6 I'm looking at. I've turned over too many pages. There you go.
No, we're all looking a bit confused looking at the papers. We thought there was something missing, but thanks anyway, Andrew. Any other questions, comments? Don't see anyone want to come in. Okay, we'll go to the recommendations, which is agree the draft revenue budget for 2024-25 as set on table 1, and with that extra information that Janet can provide to the board. Are we happy to do so? Yep. Thank you, members. Now move on to agenda item 6, which is the internal audit report of South West of Scotland Transport Partnership. This report informs the board of the findings of the internal audit undertaken by Dumfries and Galloway's Council Internal Audit Service on the internal controls, risk management and governance arrangement of SWestrans. We've got Richard Fox and Connie Dykes are available from the Council's internal audit team to take any questions, but Douglas, do you have anything to add to the report?
No, Chair, nothing to add to the report, other than to say that I do feel I was well audited.
Thank you very much. I see Richard's in the room. Have you anything to add to the report?
Just to say, it is just myself and not Connie here today, as you may have noticed. This was a high-level review of the governance arrangements. There has been a very positive response to the audit, and I'm sure you, yourselves and ourselves will be following up to see that the actions have been implemented in due course. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Andrew, this is your opportunity. We're now on item 6.
Thanks, Chair. That's extremely kind of you. So now we've got the right page. It's 2, and as I say, it's under 3.5. And within the chart number 8, where it's talking about the delivery plan and the regular basis, it's just to try and identify what the terminology of regular basis was. And the other point that I wanted to raise was within the report, the audit opinion, the second paragraph, SWestrans was established 70 years ago. And it talks about there isn't a service level agreement with the council. I thought there was a new service agreement made when we got more closely aligned with the council.
Okay, I'll see if we can help out on that. Richard, or maybe even Douglas. Richard first and then Douglas.
To be honest, I'm not aware of one. I was aware that one was drafted but wasn't actually signed by the council. And obviously it's for Douglas to share with us subsequent developments. I'll pass it back to Douglas.
Douglas.
Yes, I just confirmed there's not a service level agreement as such for how SWestrans and the council operate together, and that's one of the things that's certainly been picked up through the audit that we need to have in place, Andrew. We do work closer together on certain aspects, particularly capital expenditure, where we have aligned programmes, but that wasn't the same as a service level agreement, which we believe, and the audit has picked up, needs to be taken forward. In relation to how regular it is a regular basis, as regular as we have 5 board meetings a year, so probably about we will pace them across the board meetings to ensure that the board are kept up to date on progress.
To follow up, Chair, can I ask then, when do we anticipate having a level agreement, service level agreement with the council?
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Andrew. We've said in the report we're looking to have something in place round about the end of this calendar year so that we can bring it to the board in January next year. There's a bit of work to be done on it to make sure that it's all tied up properly and with all the arrangements that are necessary. But we've certainly got one that we had written several years ago that we can now tweak and present to the council. But we'll bring it to the board as part of that process as well.
My apologies, I've misread that. I thought it was the end of the past year. So I thought you were running behind there. That was all. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
No, thanks, Andrew, for keeping Douglas on his toes. I've got the Vice Chair to come in. Karen, please.
Thanks, Chair. The report looks great, and Douglas, sorry, you feel very well audited, but I think the rest of us need to feel very well audited as well. So great to have, and some really helpful recommendations. Just on the timescale of responding or discharging some of those actions, can we just challenge ourselves to make sure they're realistic? So 8, for example, suggests you've got a delivery plan, performance indicators, and a business plan for May. With the best will in the world, I don't think we're going to be able to deliver that. So let's not set ourselves up to fail. So I just think, Douglas, it's worth probably just exploring how we respond to some really important recommendations, but do that properly and take the time we need properly as well. And I suspect that links back to our previous discussion on the revenue budget, just recognising that budget and the resources we've got haven't gone up. So we just need to be realistic about what we can deliver effectively. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much for your comments. Vice Chair Douglas, do you want to respond?
Yeah, just very briefly, yeah, we do like to challenge ourselves, as you know, Vice Chair. The reason for me on that action was that we are planning to bring a delivery plan on the RTS to the board in June, so it was to get ours. We're hoping to have a suite of other documents, including a business plan, that will follow along as well. So part of the action should be complete by around May, but we'll then keep the board informed as we go.
Thanks, Douglas. Councillor Scobie, Willie?
Just on the same point that Andrew Wood was making in terms of the service level agreement, and I noted in the previous report that there's 70,000 from the NHS contribution. In terms of service level agreement, I don't know if there's a stipulation as to how that 70,000 can be used or should be used in that respect, and I'm looking at that in terms of if we take the Dumfries and Galloway as a region and compare that with Highlands and Islands give a subsidy for travel, anyone travelling into an appointment or whatever, they get a subsidy. So is there any stipulation in terms of who uses that £70,000, and does it require a service level agreement? And because reference has been made to the council when there are other contributors, and what the monitoring arrangement is on that.
Thanks, Willie. Douglas?
Yes, Chair. That particular 70,000 relates to the 111 bus service from Dumfries Town Centre to the hospital. So it's the NHS contribution for that service to continue. And that's been in place, and it's a contractual arrangement. So it's just a contribution to the overall funding of that service.
You want to come back in, Willie?
Yeah, that's interesting to hear in terms of Dumfries. Is there a subsidy in terms of travel fares on that route to the 111?
Douglas?
No, it just operates as a normal bus service.
Anyone else? Don't see anyone. So go to recommendations, which is 1, to note and welcome the internal audit, and 2, to agree the main findings of the internal audit and to implement the action plan to address the 9 audit actions identified as summarised in Table 2. And I think we'll take on board what the Vice Chair was saying, having realistic targets. So we're happy to note and agree those. Yep, nods in the room. Thank you very much. Now move on to agenda item 7, which is the Regional Transport Strategy 2023 to 2042. This report advises the Board of the letter received from the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, which confirms final approval of SWestrans Regional Transport Strategy 2023 to 2042 by the Scottish Ministers. So I've got Douglas or Kirsty, anything to add to the report?
Just very briefly, Chair, just to say that it feels like it's been a long time coming, but we've got there, and it's a very short report just to advise the board that that's now been agreed, and that we will bring the delivery plan to the next board, and then we're running for the next 20 years. So, okay.
Forever the optimist. Thanks, Douglas. I'll open it up to questions. Councillor Walters, Keith.
Just to ask, actually, the amount of work that people put in, Douglas and the team and the people who were consulted and stuff, presumably we are going to get some sort of slightly longer feedback from the Scottish Government rather than just this rather short letter and saying, yes, we've agreed it. Presumably there is some sort of feedback as well.
Douglas?
Yeah, Chair, this is part of the process. It's an agreement by Scottish ministers to the actual strategy. As we develop our delivery plan and start to work through the actions within that, there'll be feedback from each element of that as we move forward, Keith. So, because we will be seeking funding for certain elements of that, obviously, to deliver the ambitions within the strategy.
Thanks, Douglas. Anyone else? Don't see any hands coming up. Okay, we'll move to the recommendations, which was to...
Vice Chair.
Oh, Vice Chair, in at the last minute. Okay, Karen.
Sorry, Chair. I'm not sure whether I'm raising a hand or writing please speak. Apologies. I think, as Councillor Walters was saying, and Douglas, you too, this represents a really significant point in time for us. So I think acknowledging the significant work that's gone into getting us to this stage. There's always a but, though, and Douglas, you're highlighting that delivery plan activity. I think that's where the real hard work starts, if it hasn't already felt like real hard work. I'd be really keen, as part of the delivery plan discussion, to think about how we're sharing this externally. So what's our communications plan? It's a significant document. It reflects the detail, which means it's quite difficult for it to, I don't know what the right phrase is, for it to be kind of understood on the street, as it were. But this is really important. So can we build into the work that you're already doing, Douglas, to think about that communications activity? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. Douglas?
Yes, Chair, and it's certainly part of the work we've been thinking about. We've got an easy read version of the delivery plan as well as an easy read version of the strategy. So we are looking at how we get that. The fact that we've now got it agreed out into the wider domain, but also to make it understandable, and because there's a lot within it, and it's about how we can't take it all forward in one go either. So it's just making sure that we actually phasing this in the right way, which is what a delivery plan's all about, I believe. So.
Thanks, Douglas. Yeah, and I echo just what you said about the amount of work that's gone into this report over the years. So, and now that we've got to a certain stage, but it's time to look forward, I suppose. So, thanks very much for that, Karen. Anyone else wishing to come in? Don't see anyone, so we'll go to the recommendations, which is to note the letter at the appendix from the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, which confirms the final approval from the Scottish Ministers of the SWestrans Regional Transport Strategy 2023 to 2042. Happy to note. Looks like we are. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item 8, which is the procurement of standing orders. This report seeks approval to revoke the existing procurement standing orders and replace with the revised procurement standing orders provided in the appendix. Excuse me. Karen Scott, the Council's Procurement and Commissioning Manager, is available for any questions. I take Karen's. She's online, I see. So before I let you in, Karen, Douglas, have you anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair, but no, it's a very bulky document, the procurement standing orders, as you can see, so I'm more than happy to defer to Karen on any questions, Chair.
Over to you, Karen.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Douglas. So I think, yeah, this is obviously an update to bring us in line, and it's consistent with the Council's standing orders and procedures. So it's the way that the SWestrans procurement activity has been operating. So it's the governance viewpoint to ensure that the standing orders reflect exactly the practice that's been undertaken at the moment.
Thanks very much. Any comments or questions? Councillor Walters. Keith.
Just a couple of quick questions. In the report on 2.3, Douglas has mentioned that there are more tender procedures available which aim to promote innovation, and I'm sort of interested to see. Obviously, it's quite a long document, and I just wonder where in particular that was. And secondly, we've had some concerns about when we've procured services from transport operators in terms of obtaining performance indicators, as in, asking the bus company how often their buses are breaking down. And I wondered if there's anything in the new performance, in the new procurement that would cover that.
Thanks, Keith. Karen, can you help?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of the former procurement standing orders, it had just an open tender procedure as being the kind of primary route, and whilst that is our typically used route, the update to the procurement regulations in 2015 did include for additional routes to market. So if we're looking for something a bit different. So if we know we just need to transport people, but we don't want to prescribe exactly how that is done, there's things through competitive dialogue procedures, for example, that can be used that that don't prescribe the particular outcome and the solution, and it's more of a flexible negotiation with suppliers through the process. So sections 20, 21 and 22 have been added within the procurement standing orders that allow for competitive procedure with negotiation, competitive dialogue and innovation partnerships, which are not going to be the routine route to market. They are relatively complex and would be for slightly different situations, but the standing orders obviously now permit those types of procedures to take place for SWestrans. In relation to the KPI question, it's not something that's pulled out exactly within the procurement standing orders. However, KPIs and Douglas and I have been working really closely on all of the new contracts that will be let over the coming periods. And I know the network review is on later on the agenda around the timings for that. However, all of those contracts would have really clear, robust KPIs and monitoring arrangements in place, and we would be supporting SWestrans and Douglas as lead officer through the procurement team to ensure that we're getting that monitoring information as well, and we're actioning that accordingly.
Thanks, Karen. Has that been helpful, Keith?
Yeah, that's really helpful on the innovation. The KPIs thing, I'm still not sure where are we going to be able to make sure that when we do procure services that we are including that, and where that comes in the sort of the overall standing orders.
Thanks, Keith. Karen?
So it's not defined as such within the standing orders. It fits as part of our contract supplier management policy that we adopt, which is separate to the procurement standing orders in terms of how we manage our contracts. The procurement standing orders do mandate use of the council's template documents, however, for all procurement procedures, and within those template documents we've got clear and robust KPIs that are then developed further for each individual contract, and it would be picked up through the mandatory use of those template documents.
Thanks, Keith.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
I've got Andrew Wood and then Willie Scobie. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It's within the actual document on page 21. 24 electronic auctions. I take it this is not bidding online, but could I possibly get an explanation or clarification on exactly what the meaning of that first paragraph 24.1 is?
Thanks, Andrew. Karen, can you assist?
Yeah, I'm just quickly scrolling to the relevant section. So I think, yeah, so electronic auctions would be for things such as like your IT purchases. So it actually operates a little bit like eBay, but back to front. So it's not something that would typically be used particularly for SWestrans purchases, but it is something that's within the regulations that's legally permitted. As I say, it's something within the council we're exploring use of for IT type purchases. So if SWestrans were looking to purchase an IT type system, it's something that's commonly used in that type of sector, but certainly would not be something we'd be looking to use for our core contract activity within SWestrans for our bus contracts. But it basically works like back to front eBay in a simple way.
Thanks, Karen. Andrew?
No, that does help, because as I say, when I first read it, I thought, oh, here we go, we're bidding online, you know. But no, that's grand.
Just
Thank you very much.
option.
Thanks, Andrew. Willie?
Thanks, Chair. I think, and it's not a criticism of you, Karen, but I think it's governance heavy and performance weak in terms of risk factor, reputation and so forth, because just building on what Keith was talking about there in terms of KPIs, and he referred to breakdown of vehicles, but it's the use of the vehicles, or the standard of the vehicles that are being used. And I've raised at SWestrans the issue of long distance services where there are no toilet convenience stops or toilets on board. some travelling long distance, to attend the DGRI, and sometimes being caught out on journey, which is quite embarrassing. So it's really the tender under that KPI of how we measure the performance of the contractors against the standard of service we expect, and how flexible are we in the procurement in terms of negotiating, that we should have convenience stops, and Douglas' response to that was, well, we'll tie into the forthcoming contracts. That would be the same for the standard of vehicles being used. And Douglas came back at that time and said there would be a cost attached to it. And have we got flexibility rather than having to wait on new contracts? If it is seen that this is a service that's just not acceptable, for SWestrans then to renegotiate without going out to tender and using those tendering or procurement procedures to negotiate contracts. And have we got the whereby-alls, the financial resources to do this before we wait on any new contracts? Because the folk can't wait if they need a P, in journey, long distance journeys in particular. So it's that whole reputational element, the risk associated with that, and that's the same for breakdowns, type of vehicles, and so forth and so on. How flexible are we in terms of procurement in negotiating contracts?
Yeah, thanks, Willie. Karen, can you assist Councillor Scobie?
Yes, I think there's a couple of points in Councillor Scobie's questions in relation to flexibility around negotiation. Absolutely, we have that ability, and the standing orders are also supporting us with the governance to back that up. Obviously, there's recommendations, as I referred to earlier, in terms of the network review around any extensions and things as well. But those are negotiated, and so things that we wish to change can be picked up through those negotiations. I'm aware of a particular issue that I think Councillor Scobie raised with Douglas's lead officer in relation to the toilet stop on the Stranraer to Dumfries route. Douglas and I have had conversations with Stagecoach already around the timetabling. So it has impacts on the wider timetable to incorporate a stop for a comfort break within that route. But that is something that is currently being explored with through negotiation and discussion with Stagecoach, based on that feedback that Councillor Scobie has previously relayed to Douglas as lead officer. So that's something we're looking to incorporate where we can do within the timetable, and irrespective of the contractual timings. In relation to the vehicle standards as well, we do mandate a certain standard of vehicle. Our contracts are nearing end date, and the longer term contracts will obviously provide, and the dialogue we've had through a lot of the network review with operators has absolutely been about investment in fleet and getting better vehicles, providing the services to our residents across D&G. But for them to make that investment, they need that longer term commitment, and that's absolutely the kind of longer term plan. However, we do have specific requirements within our existing contracts that should be adhered to, but it's challenging as we're not given that longer term commitment at this time. But certainly going forward, as I believe Douglas has fed back previously, the intention is absolutely to have investment coming into the fleet that's across all of our operators and our operators, through the dialogue I personally had with them in the network review, has been really positive, and they are all really keen to have investment and put that investment into the fleet that's currently servicing our region.
Yeah, thanks very much, Karen. Willie?
I'm delighted to hear, Karen. It's how do we measure and how do we monitor certain standard of vehicles, particularly in long distance journeys. And again, I refer to the Stranraer Dumfries, the 500, the vehicles that are used. The colloquialism is that, you know, they're ramshackles when you're in it for 75 miles, 2 hours, and the bus is rattling all over. So how do we monitor that KPI, that performance, in terms of the standard of vehicles that are being used? And then coming back to the point that Karen makes in terms you're in negotiations, have we got the ability then to look for change before the new contracts come in August or the autumn of this year? That if there is talks ongoing, then could we see an introduction of those comfort breaks on journey before new contracts?
Thanks, Willie. I think on the likes of the state of the buses and things like that, if it's commercial, I think we would have to rely on the commercial operators to furnish us with that information. Douglas, do you want to pick that one up?
So, yeah, Chair, no problem. Yeah, we obviously, as Karen has said, we're getting near the end state of the contracts where we're at. So the vehicles that are operating are as required within our conditions of contract at that time. So, but as we get new contracts in, we will have KPIs in there, and we've got Linda and Jason will be out monitoring services and ensuring that what we are providing. Because a key element of this is the contract management beyond the actual tender. Particularly if we're looking at longer term contracts, we need to ensure that that quality is there and remains there going forward. In relation to the negotiation element, yeah, if we, as part of the discussions, we can bring anything in earlier rather than later, that's something we would be looking to do as well. It has to work within the budgets we have available, so we would come back, as always, to the board if there's any implications.
Thanks, Douglas. Councillor Dempster. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Just on the same point that Wally raised, and I'm sure Douglas will be fed up listening to me, and I'm quite not surprised, but I know what Linda is saying about we mandate contractors to provide buses of suitable standard. Douglas knows I've had a route for the last 9 months that's had a bus on it that's not of suitable standard. Douglas knows that. The community know that. The contractor knows that. And yet the contractor chooses to breach the contract and has done for the last 9 months by running a vehicle that's simply not fit for purpose, and it's not what we mandated from that contractor. And the problem is we've got so few contractors that they know they can do very much as they please, and I find it disappointing. Douglas has got it sorted, and it's a good job it's sorted. I see the bus on the road, our own bus last week. It's great, but the interim wasn't great. We've lost passengers, we've lost confidence, we've lost reputation because a contractor did not meet his contractual obligations. So if we're talking about new contracts, and if we give these contracts to private contractors, whoever they may be, we should be in a place where if they fail to meet minimum standards, then we have to deal with them, we have to remove the contract, whatever it is we have to do, because our own purpose in life, shall we say, is to deliver high quality service to bus passengers. And that, in my experience, hasn't happened recently. I don't want to go beyond that, but Douglas knows where I am. I've been writing to him about school transport just this week, which is another issue. But all these things really have to be addressed because we as a board, and Douglas as a lead officer, has a reputation to maintain, and it shouldn't be sullied by others. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I mean, nobody will disagree with what you're saying, what Willie's saying. However, this is we're looking at procurement of standing orders, and I take comfort of what Karen was saying in response to what Willie was raising, and probably yourself. You know, it's how we get the procurement right. I do sympathise with you, Jim. You've taken these up with the lead officer. We've had our meetings as well. So I think we'll just leave that one there. Thanks very much. I've got Vice Chair coming in, Karen.
Thanks, Chair. It's probably a question about process, actually. So it's great to see such a quick response to the internal audit. So brilliant to have that high recommendation address now. So thank you, Douglas and Karen, for taking that forward. I think there's a point about how we make sure that we're aligned as we move forward. So obviously we needed internal audit to pick this up. Can we make sure that we're doing regular updates as necessary? I think Councillor Walters has referred to innovation in procurement. It's an area where there is lots of innovation. Let's make sure that we are up to speed and following best practice. Interesting, Karen, just to hear a little bit about how you take community wealth building principles into account, just that local provision and local procurement, I think is really important. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, and I'm sure Karen, I seen her nodding her head in agreement there. Unless you want to respond, Karen, the other Karen that is.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose in terms of the updates as well, obviously it has been some time since these particular standing orders were updated. The council ones have been updated twice, I think, in that period. So we will make sure, as a matter of course, any updates that have been undertaken on the council ones are reflected within SWestrans going forwards. In relation to the community wealth building principles, is absolutely the heart of the process and how we take things forward. So the strategies and things that are developed is always with community wealth building at the mindset of everything that's developed. So I've done a lot of work recently with Douglas and operators, and it is around that, how do we build that kind of local engagement as the first step before we take any process forward.
Thanks very much. Don't see anybody else want to come in, so we'll move to the recommendations, which is 1, to revoke the current procurement standing orders effective from the 25th of March 2024, and 2, approve the adoption of the procurement standing orders provided in the appendix of this report effective from the 25th of March 2024, and we've taken on board a number of points that was raised through that debate. So we're happy to revoke and agree. Yeah, nods in the room. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll now move on to agenda item 9, which is the SWestrans Annual Report 2022-23. This report seeks agreement to the SWestrans Annual Report 22-23. Kirsty, this is your report. Do you have anything to add?
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to note that it had been raised previously by the board about the template that we use for the annual report, and officers had committed to, reviewing that and essentially, reviewing all the information within it and making it a bit more efficient read. What we decided was that because the RTS that we're reporting on for this year, so 22-23, is still the old RTS, we've kept it consistent, and we will look to review the annual report template for the following year once the new RTS is in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up. Any members, board members, got questions, comments? Councillor Scobie, Willie?
A couple of comments, Chair, on the annual report I'm looking at. I can find the page. It's under 3.2 on observers. I don't know if there's a number on the page. And it's just recognising the number of observers, but none really west of the region. Is there a stipulated number of observers that the board can have? And how do people make application, nominate or whatever to become observers to the board? That would be my first question. I know there's been a couple of late in the west that have been interested in transport movements and might be worth your approach. Just again, in terms of, I don't know what page, recommendation 40, access and the ports of Cairn Ryan, and this is response that we have put in terms of the A77 and A75, in terms of its condition. I would have liked to have seen, and it's a factual document, but in terms of the response that for me it would be to dual carriage both with access to the ports of Cairnryan, and it's a huge deficit in STPR2. The draft STPR2 that has been delayed and delayed and delayed, so we don't know when it's coming out, but it doesn't recognise the two roads as being the trunk roads to be brought up to dual carriageway standard, and I would hope that SWestrans would reflect that in any response that we put in. And there's also reference there to upgrading and relocation of the railway station in Stranraer that is very much long outstanding in terms of upgrading. Even, and I noticed there was lights put up, which is an improvement, for winter periods, but very much needing that, indeed a transport hub in Stranraer to recognise that as well. And again, there's other parts, Stranraer and Lochrain. It's really an importance of Lochrain and the ports of Cairnryan to the whole economy of the region, recognising that both these infrastructure needs to be upgraded for all reasons, industry, tourism, the whole lot. And there is another report on rail later on, so I'll raise that when we come to that one. So just comments, Chair, that we as a board, we recognise the importance of both these trunk roads and the railway station in Stranraer.
Yep, thanks very much, Willie. On the observers, I've had two people come to me to try and be on, and I think that's something that you yourself, Claire, have helped out. Maybe you can assist Willie on that particular front before I bring Kirsty or Douglas in on the other points.
Okay, thank you. We can advise there's no minimum number that the board can appoint as observers. The appointment of observers is a matter for the board. Anybody interested in being an observer, they're contacted and they're asked to provide the following information that the board needs to have before them when they're making the decision as to, and the information they're asked to provide is that the board should consider, will the proposed individual have a useful input and make a valuable contribution? Does the individual represent a specific interest group? Does the individual bring a particular knowledge or expertise? And the people, anybody interested are asked to provide information and to those points. Observers are appointed for 4 years, and there's periodic reviews of those observers, and there's probably a review due shortly on the guidance as well.
Thanks, Claire. Douglas, I'll bring you in on some of the other points, but bearing in mind that the report's really for the operational and financial year, but it does cover some of those issues that you raised, Douglas.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the questions. Well, yeah, the report is just really highlighting that there is a recommendation within the STPR2, so it's not our recommendation, but it's a recommendation that affects our region. But I can assure you that it is one of our strategic objectives, is that link to the Lochrain and stuff. So as we move forward, we will develop our view on what is actually necessary on both trunk roads and access to the port. So that's something to take forward. And in relation to observers, I don't think Kirsty wants to come in relation to observers, I think again, as we move forward, as officers, we said we really need to start publicising, look, we are here, come and talk to us, give us your expertise, rather than waiting for people to come to us. We should be more proactive about going into the community. Because there are a number of good people who've questioned me recently from Stranraer.
Thanks, Douglas. Kirsty?
Mine's is just a point to note. Apologies that there's no page numbers, Councillor Scobie, on the document. I had thought I'd added them in, so I appreciate that it's difficult when we're trying to reference here what we're talking about, but we do have paragraph numbers, but my apologies, I've overlooked that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just the rail,
yeah, sure.
The railway station in Stranraer, how far on are we with that?
Yeah, so sorry, yes, railway station, how far are we on with it? Yes, it's part of we're waiting to see what comes out of the STPR2 delivery plan and how far Transport Scotland are with that. As you know, we'll talk, there's a rail paper later relating to the same line. We are due a meeting, I think a quarterly meeting with Network Rail and ScotRail shortly, so we'll bring that up again to see how that's getting on.
Yeah, thanks, Douglas. I see we've got in the chat from Laura Moody. Not sure if I can speak as an observer, but I do live in the west of the region. Laura, you're not an observer, but you're a member of the public, and if you want to address the committee, please do so.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to make that point. I'm here representing Dumfries and Galloway Bus Users Group, which obviously wasn't formed back in 2022. But yeah, to answer sort of the first point that was made, I do live in the west of the region, and actually I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I think the bulk of our membership currently is in the west of the region. So there is a voice there for the west.
So is that you offering to volunteer to become a...
I'd be very happy, yes, that's fine. I'd be very happy to be officially an observer.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Walters, Keith.
I'm just looking at the Appendix 1A, the priority intervention packages. I just wondered whether there was going to be a point where we actually took some of these things off. Because if you look at the first one, for instance, which is the A709, the road between here and Lockerbie, it was considered by the board in 2010, and it was then retained as an aspiration. I don't know. In the last couple of years, I've not seen anything. And this isn't a criticism. I'm just wondering what the process might be to get some of these things off. I see the Dumfries Southern Bypass is also on there as well, where rather sort of. It says further board consideration may be required, which I think perhaps is an understatement, to say the least. Will this change when we sort of take on a new sort of template for reviewing the priority interventions, and perhaps we could call them something else? Perhaps things that we've thought about and which we're going to think about more in the future, or we could perhaps see about getting rid of some of them as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Keith. Since I've been on the board, that's come to the board even during the last term, and I think we had a similar discussion. If we're not progressing with the Southern Bypass, for example, or the fast link on the 709 to Lockerbie, why is it still there? I believe it was in the original regional transport strategy, is my understanding, and I think it was kept because it's like everything, Keith, we have aspirations, but when will they transpire, I suppose. But Kirsty, do you want to help Councillor Walters?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I would just agree really with what you've said. All of these refer to the existing, we'll class it as the old RTS, and we've got the new RTS. So this will change completely with the new RTS. So we've got a new delivery plan. So I appreciate that a lot of these, points in here are a bit out of date, shall we say now. So that will be completely reviewed with the new RTS. Thanks.
Has that been helpful, Keith?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks very much.
Okay, so excuse me. I've lost my place here. Just hang on a sec. Right, agenda item 9, yes. So any other questions, comments on agenda item 9? Don't see anyone online. Okay, we'll move to the recommendations, which is to agree the SWestrans annual report for 22-23, attached as the appendix for submission to the Scottish Ministers. Happy to agree. Nods in the room. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item 10, which is develop to deliver. This report informs the board of the policy prepared by Scotland's 7 regional transport partnerships, the RTPs. Douglas, have you anything to add? But I see you've got the chair to comment on the process, as it was the chairs who agreed this. So are you handing that one over to me? Yeah, thanks very much. I'll just get the pages up. Okay, we did have a chairs meeting just recently in Dumfries. I chaired that. This has been on the go since 2015, and things have changed since that time. So obviously we decided that a few things that need to be changed in relation to some of the issues that have since happened. So there's a number of key points in there. If you look at page 1 in the report, 3.1, there's 10 sort of delivery aspects. You've got coordinating the action on reducing emissions, delivering more effective, transparent delivery focused governance and roles and responsibilities. 3 is transforming active travel. 4, helping make public transport more affordable. 5, seizing the opportunity to ensure the true alignment of strategic transport and land use planning. 6 is working in partnership to improve transport access to health and social care. 7, ensuring our islands are better connected. 8 is delivering for the freight sector. 9 is promoting and delivering demand responsive transport and mobility as a service. And 10 is sustaining air services. A lot of that probably wouldn't relate to SWestrans, however, because it's the regional chairs that get together. There are issues in other areas. So these are explained more if you look in to the appendix. It goes through all the ones. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. So there's a lot of information there. So I'm happy to take any questions if I can help with the questions. But it's a moving document. It's a working document. So it's something that all chairs try to aspire to. We do have differences in our regional transport areas. However, we do have a lot of similarities. Even some of the larger RTPs like SPT, for example, we always think, oh well, that's just an urban, RTP. Well, in fact, they've actually got a fair bit of rural, South Lanarkshire, Clydesdale, and Renfrewshire. So there's a lot of rural areas similar to what we have here in Dumfries, and then you've got borders as well, the Highlands. So in similar situations. So I'll try and answer some of the questions if anybody's got any questions. Councillor Walters, Keith.
Sorry, John. just a sort of general thing. Do each of these regional transport partnerships, have they been through the same process in terms of renewing their regional transport thing? So these are the key points from the end of last year, then, yeah. And so how does that fit with what are they all coming up with new regional transport plans going forward now?
My understanding at the moment, Keith, is that most of the RTPs have done their regional transport strategies. I think maybe 1 or 2 left, Douglas, still to do theirs. Once all that's been pulled together, and obviously we've just had our one signed off, so these RTPs would have to have their one signed off, and probably maybe not the next chairs meeting, but the one after that, we may have a further report coming, how we take that forward. Hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, that's fine. It would just be interesting, obviously, wouldn't it, to compare with some of the other rural RTPs. Go from there. Thanks.
Yeah, we do get updates. As I said, just recently we had the RTPs, and we did have an update, but it was a short brief. Douglas, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, Chair. Once a national, this is just it's part of the national transport strategy that then drives forward when the regional transport strategies come after the national transport strategy to link in. So we've all gone through the joy of creating our regional transport. There's a lot of synergies between us, and that's why this document's been brought together. As the chair said, the RTP chairs were keen that there were certain areas that we can work in collaboration across all of the 7 partnerships. So this is very much about that. It's just a document to give us that framework to work together, and just to give all the boards, all the 7 boards across the country, and Transport Scotland and the Minister, Cabinet Secretary now, that assurance that we are working closely to align our strategies with the national outcomes.
Thanks, Douglas. Any other questions, Willie?
A couple of points, Chair. One is the transforming active travel, and I'm looking at the document that you referred to, the 10 paragraphs, transforming active travel. And it's the bit where it says active travel, project development and delivery, regional coordination. I would hope that is by consent. I'm pleased to have a chat with Grant at the beginning, that on the 2 projects that are moving forward in Castle Douglas and Stranraer, that it's by consent and not imposition in the delivery. That it does have the people, we take the people with us in whatever we do, and if the people don't want it, then there is no imposition. I refer to the roundabout in Castle Douglas and the pedestrianisation in Stranraer, where the first consultation I've referred to it in the past maybe didn't reach as many businesses as we as a board would have expected. So it's just to catch that in the minute, if that's possible. And the other one is just, we've talked about initiative and innovation and everything else. I'm looking at working in partnership to improve transport access to health and social care. And it's how do we do this, working with the health board. I referred earlier to, and I don't know if it was part of the discussion in your chair's group, Chair, but, Highlands and Islands pay a subsidy for travel to hospitals. Whether we, as a board, maybe should initiate discussions with the health board to see, how can we get similar schemes as exists in Highlands and Islands, so that people can afford to travel for health and social care. I'm talking about people who frequently have to travel from Stranraer to Dumfries for hospital appointments. And that's frequent, that's almost daily. And some really, cost of living crisis and so forth, it can be expensive. So it's to open up that dialogue with the health board and maybe report back what initiatives can we initiate as a board in terms of getting parity, because there is reference to that in the report about equality and equity and so forth with other areas of Scotland that we seem to be well behind. Purely raise that as an initiative, Chair, if we could agree to maybe kick something off on that.
Yeah, thanks, Willie. Yeah, when we do get together as chairs, like I say, we have similarities, and obviously that was one of them, was access to health. And a number of the RTPs, they actually have demand-responsive transport, community transport, etc., and some of them are actually improving on that, because this is where we get sort of best learning practices, across the RTPs. Do you want to come in on some of that, just to assure Willie?
As much as I can, yes. We are working in partnership through the third sector, Dumfries and Galloway, with NHS Dumfries and Galloway, looking at this aspect at the moment, Willie, so that is ongoing. It's also one of the priorities within our regional transport strategy, so it will continue to be brought to the board and how we can develop that. We're looking at creating a transport hub within the NHS, that we then share our vehicles with community transport vehicles and other, so we get better access across the piece and equitable access for people as well. So cost shouldn't be an issue in getting to and from health.
Willie?
Just when Douglas raises that, and it's been the highlight in regional IT news and so forth about disabled transport taxis, and how I think it's 3 they were quoting. There was only 3 in the whole of Dumfries and Galloway. How much does that feature in health and social care in the discussions you're having? Whether there is sufficient number of suitable vehicles to transport disabled people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of it. As you know, community transport does have a number of accessible vehicles, so they're very much part of the key partners in that. And also for the board's awareness, I'm also on the working group that's looking at the accessible taxis across the region at the moment as well. So I'm part of the council's review of that too.
Thanks very much, Douglas. Anyone else? Don't see anyone. Oh, I've got Vice Chair, Karen.
Thanks, Chair. It's great to see the level of collaboration across RTPs. I think that sharing and learning from each other is really key. Interesting just to understand, as well as the Chair's discussion, whether there are officer level discussions and how we're sharing that expertise. And I think that's something that obviously across RTPs we're all challenged with in terms of resource and people resource. How are we sharing that expertise? And I know you probably want a neat list of 10, but challenges around people and skill shortages is something that's raised frequently. Is that kind of a theme or a strand to the discussions that the chairs are having? Thanks.
Yeah, especially when we're trying to recruit bus drivers, that's a big issue, and it does come across all the RTPs, so we're not unique in this area for that particular one. Yeah, best practices. I think we've learnt a lot, from SWestrans, from other regions, particularly the Highlands and Islands. So I don't know if you want to add to any of that response, Douglas.
I think it's a very valid response, Chair. Just in relation to, do the lead officers and officers meet? Yes, we do. We have a lead officers forum, and we have forums underneath that specialise, say, in active travel or in transport to health as well, for other officers within the RTPs with certain specialisms as well. So there is, as a family of RTPs, we do try and collaborate and work closely together to ensure that what works in one region can be changed if necessary, but also work in our region as well. Within the resources, as you continually reference as well, Karen, it's always a challenge.
Thanks, Douglas. Karen, do you want to come back in?
No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much. If there's no one else want to come in, we'll go to the recommendations, which is 1, to note the develop to deliver 2023 refresh document at the appendix, and 2, endorse the principles of collaboration, opportunities for regional coordination, and the role of regional transport partnerships in enabling liaison between national and local authorities. We're happy to note and endorse. Okay, now move on to agenda item 11, which is the local bus network review. This report provides an update on the outcomes and findings of the school and local bus network reviews and seeks approval for the recommendations to progress with securing a sustainable transport network. Douglas, have you anything to add to the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Nothing on the report itself. I'll obviously be happy to take any questions. However, we did this week, yourself and a number of board members were informed of a petition that we're likely to receive in the near future about reinstating evening bus services on the Lockerbriggs and Heath Hall corridors, which have not been returned since COVID times, if we can call it that. Following agreement with yourself, we obviously wrote to the lead petitioner referencing that we would highlight that there is an ongoing petition, that we're aware of it, and that once it is provided, we will then follow the proper process and bring it to the board. As it's these services are on a commercial route, obviously it would be up to the commercial company first to consider the petition. We would then seek to see if there's any other, if their choice at that point was not to reinstate, we would then seek to highlight the opportunity to any other operator to operate on a commercial basis. And then at that point, we would then need to consider it as a board if there was whether or not we had the ability to reinstate services with public funding, etc., to take it forward. But that would be a full, much more detailed paper to come to the board on that, Chair. But just said I would highlight that as part of this item.
Thanks very much, Douglas. Any comments, questions? Willie and then Keith.
In reverse this time. No, I'm just noting the 3.4 with particular reference to school and home to school transport, and it's always an issue in terms of the 2 and 3 mile journey, and it's to that pick-up point that it's often it's a long journey, and particularly in the more rural areas where it's dark, no pavements and so forth. And I see Jim Dempster's offline now, but we did raise this many years ago in the Labour group at full council in terms of reducing that 2 and 3, but it never found total support because it does create problems, not only in terms of the contractors, but the journey, walking distance for kids. And I note there that there's only one operator available west of the region. I think Jim referred to it, there's problems in Sanker as well. It's really the 3.6 expansion of Tier 1 community level provision, and there is reference there to DGC buses as PSV operator. Is that being developed, or are we seriously looking at becoming an operator under that provision? And Douglas just spurred me on in terms of what he was talking about, bus routes and petition. I think I referred to it when I was doing round the shops in Stranraer. There is another petition making its way to SWestrans in terms of, maybe Linda wants it, and that's the town service route, bringing back, because it started at what was the co-op, now the Millennium Centre in Stranraer. That was always the start and finish of town service. There's a petition to bring that back rather than it being opposite the St John Castle. If we can try and incorporate that in some way so that the bus does return to once Church Street is reopened. It's just to review that service in town centre. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Willie. On the school's transport, there's another element of complexity, shall we say, when education are talking about the school alignment. So, Douglas, can you help or assist Willie on the points?
Yeah, Chair. Obviously, this is a joint review of the council, and it's the council's responsibility for school transport, where SWestrans is for the local bus network element of it. But in relation to the asymmetric timetabling, that I listened in with great interest to the Education and Learning Committee last week on members' concerns and members' views, etc. And obviously that was deferred, the decision last week, and further papers will be coming. That's kind of why we are where we are with this review as well, because until we know what the decision is on asymmetric timetabling, we cannot go out to replace our network, because it's such a fundamental impact on that. So this is one of a number of bullet points picked up in here. Obviously, the network, as we've known, we've said for a while, it's very fragile. There's very little resilience in the network. If we're looking at changing the school day, it has such a fundamental impact on what the local bus service is going to look like as well. We need to work, and we are working closer with those Tier 1 level services, community transport. Should there be a bus running, a 30-seat bus running for 1 or 2 people in certain areas where it could be delivered in a better way, demand responsive is something we said. DGC buses moving towards PSV, yes, it's a possibility. The Act allows us to do that now. We have I'm aware that there's been a paper done on how that could be moved forward. That again sits with the council's responsibility rather than SWestrans, although it would have an impact on local service delivery should the council decide that's the way forward. But there will be papers, I believe, coming to the council as we develop through this coming year, really about what the new model is going to look like to get us to a position at the end of this calendar year, beginning of the new year, to have a fully a sustainable network to go to procure, which again is picking up, and I'm sure maybe Laura might want to come in at some point, but we need to ensure that we bring the public along with this as well. I know bus users Dumfries and Galloway have got a number of concerns and fully get them, and this will be built in to what we are doing in the coming year as well. Very focused, very flat out, but we have to work and we have to make sure we get it right, because we are looking at longer term contracts, improving quality, getting investment and getting more people back on bus. So I did say I wasn't going to add anything to the report, but I feel like I've added a lot there, Chair.
Yeah, just on the back of Willie's questions. Just recently the SPT, they're looking at being an operator as well. But I think the complexity of going down that road, plus the huge investment that's probably required, but it doesn't stop us from looking into that, which is probably right and proper, I suppose. I hope that's been helpful for you, Willie.
Yeah, it's just the one in terms of the town service reroute. You're looking at that. Good.
Thanks, Willie. I'll take Keith Walters next, and then I've got Laura Moody online.
One general question about it. One general question, a couple of particular questions. Just reading the recommendations that we're being asked to do. 5.2 says approve the key actions to be taken forward as set out in the paragraphs below. The way I read it is that the Stantec have done this network review, but none of the withdrawals of service would be taken forward until a full operational review had been done. Is that correct? Because obviously that paper is now publicly available. There's quite a lot. Well, there is an enormous amount of detail about the different bus routes, with quite a lot of suggestions to withdraw bus routes. And I just wanted to make sure that that's not what we're agreeing to. We're not agreeing to those withdrawals. And if that's the case, I think they should have been made a bit clearer. So that's my first general question. The second question is about the taxis, developing the capacity of the under 8 seat sectors, and whether that's going to include sort of liaison with the licensing committee in terms of giving future taxi licenses to operators who have disability access taxis. That's my two questions at the moment.
Thanks, Keith. Douglas?
Yes, the Stantec review is an independent review to see if we could find some massive efficiencies within what we were doing at the moment, which obviously is not the case, which is good to know in one way, but also it would have been useful if we could have found some efficiencies. It is their opinion on what a service how a service could work within the 3 tiers that we have as a model. It is their opinion that will then inform the further discussions with the operators over the next few months going forward, and with the public about what is a tier 1 level service, what is. So you're not being asked to remove anything at this moment, and that will come late. Hopefully won't come later, removing, but improving on what we have and what is a more sustainable way of delivering services. So yes, but it's useful to have that as a starting point. It's out there in the public domain. Hopefully we'll get some conversations going about, you can see the numbers, some of which are pretty challenging, I think. So it gives us a good starting point, Keith, and it's been a pretty difficult review to undertake, given the amount of data we've had to go through to get to this point. But again, it is that independent review of where we're at this point to allow us to move forward. In relation to the taxi element of expanding that under 8 seat market, as I mentioned in response to Councillor Scobie before about taxis and being involved in the taxi review, that's part of it, but it's also looking at how we can ensure that the vehicle quality increases, including disabled access across the piece as well. Because if we're looking for the under 8 seat sector to deliver some of transport for us, they need to be fully accessible as well. So yeah, that's a key element of it, yeah.
Has that been helpful, Keith?
That's very helpful. Do you know offhand when that's going to when that taxi review is going to report? Just as a matter of interest.
It's a council piece of work that's been led by the licensing team, so at this time, no, sorry, I don't.
I believe the last time we were on licensing, Keith, it was meant to be at the end of this year, or around about November-ish or something like that. I can't say for certain, but it seems to have popped into my mind there. I've got Laura Moody online. Laura?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Douglas, for suggesting I might want to contribute on this section. Obviously, I'm here representing bus users, and bus users are under no illusions about the difficulties the service faces. They're on the buses. They know how few other people are often on those same buses. So I really welcome that this review has been undertaken and is now being extended. And I welcome sort of that extension to the current contracts to give us time to look at this properly. I would say in terms of community consultation, really, it would be really helpful to get really good, clear glossaries and information on the language used, because, you know, I'm looking at tier 1 community level service and I want to know what that means, what that means in practice. And does that mean more community groups are going to need to step up to the plate and do more in terms of delivering transport services? I think the other thing I'd like to really know is, I mean, I've looked at enough council papers, I'm sure all of you have. I think this is the first time I've ever looked at a council paper where the equalities section in the implications was the longest section. And I think that's something we all want to bear in mind, and also should be something that during the review process, we're making clear to the powers that be in terms of funding that, you know, any cuts to bus service provision does hugely disproportionately affect some of the more vulnerable communities in Dumfries and Galloway, and you know, that isn't something we should be seeking to do.
Yep, thanks, Laura. I mean, most of our reports have an equalities implication, you know, whether it's policy, financial equalities, climate change, etc., etc. Douglas, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair, and I thank the comments from Laura, and we will definitely be involving you and bus users, Dumfries and Galloway, in depth as we go through the review. In relation to more communities stepping up and doing more, that's a possibility. It is very challenging, though, because as we know, the groups themselves, they need to be sustainable, and we need to ensure that can happen. But that is part of the package that we're looking to do, is to actually give the existing community transport operators almost mainstream some of the services they do, rather than them relying on annual funding streams, which are make it very, very difficult to then ensure delivery. So we'll be working very closely with those communities going forward. And in relation to equalities, yeah, I've worked in bus for a long time, and there are significant impacts on people without having proper transport aspect. And it doesn't need to be bus, it can be under 8 seat, but as long as there's something there that ensures people can get where they need to go in an equitable way, then that's definitely a core element of what we aspire to do going forward.
Thanks, Douglas, and thanks, Laura. If there's no one else, we'll go to the recommendations, which is to note the outcome of the school and local bus review at the appendix, and 2, to approve the key actions to be taken forward as set out in paragraphs 3.8. And Keith? Sorry,
Chair. I had a couple of particular questions about the bus details, which I just wanted to clear up, and also about the Stuntec, how Stuntec are actually presenting this in terms of. If I could just ask one, I don't want to go through the whole of the recommendations about what they're suggesting, but I just thought that, because what I mentioned earlier in my question was about this being a public paper, and so people are now coming to me and saying, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? And so I was just going to suggest that perhaps if we are going to put these things into the public, we make sure that it's very clear. For instance, what does high demand of 119 packs/day, for instance, actually mean? Or what does a moderate TNF mean? Now, I've looked at the beginning of the report. I'm assuming that there is some sort of glossary somewhere, but it's not very clear to people who are reading this, people who are bus users or who are concerned about their service. And I think we should be making absolutely sure that when we have this sort of jargon, I don't know what PAX means. I presume it's to do with passenger numbers per something else, but I don't know. And then there's things like the Service 372, the Dumfries to Sandy Hills Dalbeattie. On the one hand, it says there's high demand, and then it says Dalbeattie local journeys 0 demand. This is on the same service. So it's not really very clear whether they're saying there is high demand for the whole route, but there isn't any for the bit that goes around Dalbeattie, which I'm not sure whether. I just think it needs to be a bit clearer if people who are not experts are looking at this, and this is what we've paid Stantec to do, which is to come up with clear things and evidence as well. There's no. We don't seem to have any access to the actual evidence in terms of numbers as such. That's a question and a comment before we actually move on to the recommendations. Sorry.
No, I've even got the Vice Chair put her hand up as well, who wants to come in. Yeah, we tend to get bogged down in council speak, shall we say, especially when it comes to some of the service committees and things like that. We use acronyms, and it's not clear to the members of the public, even though they are public documents. So points well made on that. Douglas, do you want to come in on some of the others?
Yes, and I'll apologise. Okay, because this is a shortened version of all the data that we have that feeds into this. We could have tripled the size of this document today just on this one item alone. And this is part of the fact is that we prepare the Stantec, a professional organisation who work in this field. I'm a professional that works in this field, so I know that PAX means passengers. And that's all it means. It's just it's a short version of passenger. Why PEX? I don't know why PEX stands for passengers, but it always does. That's what it means. Where TNF is transport need factors that are based on. Yes, and I agree. It could be much more clear. However, it wasn't intended to be. This is the actual recommendation. This is what their recommendations were, based on their independent review. Yeah, so it could have been a lot clearer to stop any unintentional hairs running that then leads back, and hopefully not too many additional questions to members to deal with that. But I think as we move forward, we will make this very much clear as part of what we're doing, exactly what everything means. As I took Laura's point as well, what's a Tier 1 service? Just because a Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3s were agreed by a council committee in 2021, no one knows what Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3 is, so we need to be much more clear about what we're talking about, and it will get more into that individual discussions in areas about what services are. And it is backed up with a lot of data, and unfortunately I just couldn't include everything in here. So I take your point. Hopefully I've answered what PAX means. But I do. I accept the apology. It's more of a technical paper than it should have been into the public domain.
You happy with that, Keith?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I might regret asking this, but is there a link for board members to actually go to the Stantec report and see what they're actually saying anyway? Because we paid for it, haven't we?
Yes, it was paid for through the community bus fund, so Transport Scotland paid for it, which is very good. But there's a lot of data, and a lot of it's in files that would be quite challenging to actually do that too, if that makes any sense. I can, if you need, we can drill further down, but I actually think what we'll take is their recommendations and look at this with our own operators and our own communities to then develop what that'll be. And that may be more of a benefit rather than to drill back into, which is several months worth of data. And some of it is just, was it Power BI or something, data fields that feed this? I'm not even sure what I just said there, Keith. Sorry.
Thanks, Douglas. Is that you, Keith? You got
Yeah,
one more
I'll
question?
take your advice on that, but it would be good to see some development of it to make it clearer what it's advising. Thanks.
Thanks. Vice Chair, Karen?
Sorry, mine was a really minor question on the recommendation. So, absolutely, this is a really, significant piece of work, and we'll keep lots of people busy for a good few months to come. So, but it was just a really minor bit. So, if I can ask that question, one of the actions describes joint member seminars with the council. Can I just check that's members of SWestrans rather than members of the council? Cool, thank you. So David and I will similarly be invited to those discussions. Brilliant, thank you.
We wouldn't leave you out, Karen. Thanks very much. So
I'll be reading Power BI reports yet.
With that in mind, we'll move to the recommendations. Is note the outcome of the school and local bus review of the appendix, and 2, approve the key actions to be taken forward as set out at the paragraph 3.8, and we've taken a few actions to try and make it more readable for members of the public. I think that's only appropriate. So that's an action on you, Douglas. Thank you very much. So with that, we'll now move on to agenda item 12, which is the rail update. This report updates the board on 3 areas of rail matters. Douglas or Kirsty, anything to add to the report? Kirsty shaking her head.
I'll shake my head as well.
You're shaking your head, okay. So, Willie, I'll let you in first.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I made reference to it in earlier reports on the annual report in terms of the STPR2, and we've got it here before us. And we had an opportunity, you and I, John, to meet with Lord Davis, who was the Under Secretary for Transport, Marine and so forth, when we met with him just a week or so ago. And I did make the point it was disappointing that after getting the assurance that the A77 would be included in the Hendy report for action, in as much as that if the UK government picked up the 75, then it would be for the Scottish government to pick up the 77. That did not come out in the final document. So it's really what discussions are ongoing on that particular point, because there was reference to the A75, and again disappointing that we've got £8 million from, or said £8 million from the UK government for feasibility studies, but there'll no be a spade in the ground till 2027, I think was said at that meeting. So again, really, we don't know what, in effect, is going to happen to the 75 in terms of Springhome and Crocketford.
The report's rail update, Willie, item 12.
And that's what I'm looking at, Chair. Recommendation, access to the ports of Cairnryan, 5.5. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, you talked about recommendation 40 on page 2 of the report.
Yep. And it's just the update, in terms of the meeting we had with Lord Davis, the Minister, and really I would hope that we would note that there was no indication of the 77 being upgraded other than the 75 from the UK government. And I think we need to pursue that as a board, even against the STPR2 and the recommendations under paragraph 40, which was about straightening a couple of corners and putting in maybe a passing place. And that's not what we as a strategy would be looking for. So disappointing again in terms of UK government no recognising the 77, and I would hope that the board would take that up with the Scottish Government to get total clarity as to where they are with the A77 against the investment that's been announced being made by the UK Government. So that would be my point on that one, Chair. Given that the other one was an annual report, this could be here for action. And the other one is 5.6, and its reference here is rail line updates. And it's interesting to note that officers will be receiving regular updates from Transport Scotland in terms of what is the position, because the rail line from Ayr South to Stranraer has been closed since the hotel, Ayr, the station hotel, was burned down. It's now been discovered there's a further beam that was affected in that, and rather we've had different dates, and now it's being pushed into April. But my inbox and Douglas's inbox has been heavy, asking for information. And while we're receiving it, officers, how are we going to tell the public? How are we going to inform the public? Is that our responsibility, or should it be Transport Scotland and Network Rail or whoever? Because if they're letting us know, is that on an inference that then we'll let the public know? How's this going to be done? It's all well officers receiving this information. It's the public that needs it. And we need to know, when are they going to reopen that line?
Yeah, thanks, Willie. I mean, my understanding of looking at the recommendation 40, although it mentions the A75, 77, etc., but I think it was more referenced the upgrading or the relocating of the railway station in Stranraer. Yeah, I do take your point, because I mean, we still need roads for public transport, for example, buses to get to the station in the first place. So I do take your points on that. Douglas, can you assist with some of the points that Willie was raising?
Yeah, Chair, and again, that recommendation 40 is there in full, because it included the Stranraer state. But as we said earlier, the links to the ports are a key part of the regional transport strategy. As the board going forward, we will be sort of raising that and seeking advice from. It would be good to see a delivery plan for SDPR2 to see what investment is coming, if there is any investment coming. But that the A77 is certainly a key part of that RTS going forward. In relation to officers getting information and then passing it on, and who's responsible for that, at the moment, I think, as the Cabinet Secretary's made clear in her responses so far, it's South Ayrshire Council and the hotel and the works there. And once that is then handed back to Network Rail and Transport Scotland, they will then be responsible for ensuring. But I think I agree with one of the correspondents yesterday, that we would highlight again that there should be more communication come out on this, because I struggle to find it, and allegedly I'm a transport professional. So if I can, it must be really difficult for general members of the public to figure out what's happening, because it's very, I think we struggle, Kirsty, as well, just getting the information. And we're not getting a lot more information than what's here at the moment. And we're just saying that as soon as we get it, we will. I've now got some contacts in the area, Ollie, to get it out as well as quickly as possible. But we will make it clear to Transport Scotland that we believe it is there. Once that railway line is handed back to them, that they need to make sure that the public is kept fully informed, because it is dragging a long way. But they can't get access to the railway line until that hotel is made safe, and that's South Ayrshire Council's responsibility.
Thanks, Douglas. Nobody else want to come in?
Thanks, Chair.
Oh, Vice Chair, Karen.
Thanks, Chair. It was just that point about South Ayrshire Council. Douglas, are we having conversations direct with South Ayrshire Council about the kind of timeline? And then I'm going to assume that everything goes according to plan, the railway's opened. How do we work to encourage people to reuse the railway? So interesting discussions with South of Scotland Destination Alliance. How do we make sure that tourists return to the rail line, and this closure hasn't damaged that irreparably? So as I say, we can't do that until we know we have a more certain timeline, but good to think about the future and encouraging people to come back to. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Chair. We're not directly speaking to South Ayrshire Council, but we are speaking to Transport Scotland, who are speaking to. And I'm pretty sure I have an invite into my diary every once in a while to attend a quick briefing from South Ayrshire Council on progress. So we are keeping an eye on that. But we get every time there's a meeting, we've now got a direct link from the Transport Scotland representative of what's said at the meeting, should I not be able to actually attend. So we've got that. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not just about tourists, it's about the regular users that have found different ways to get where they need to go. And I think that part of that's coming through the correspondence I'm dealing with through Councillor Scobie as well, is that these people were regular users and it's really have been put out quite badly and struggling now in certain times to move on. So yeah, we really need a push across the whole of that element, and that's ScotRail, it's Transport Scotland, and ourselves, and South Ayrshire, and SPT. Look, this line exists, get back, get using it. Yeah, so it's very much key, and it's certainly something we will definitely push as soon as we have an open line again. That would be useful.
Thanks, Douglas. Thanks, Karen. No one else wishing to come in to speak? If not, we'll go to the recommendations, which is one, note the update of the Trans-Pennine Express West Coast Mainline rail services. Oh, Willie.
Yeah, Chair, it's just on the recommendation. I was just waiting till you finished that, and I totally agree with 717273, but it's, take an opportunity, as I said earlier, on the 5.5. And to put an added recommendation, and that is to seek clarification from the Scottish Government on the investment to the A77 with recognised parity to the investment being made by the UK Government on the A75.
Is it... The investment is actually just on the A75. I don't think we'll be investing on the 77.
We have not been given any indication, and the Minister couldn't give us any indication, and it's really to seek clarification from the Scottish Government that we would have parity with the investment being made by the UK Government to the A77 as well. To seek that clarification.
Is that something we can do, Douglas?
It has to happen once a meeting. Yes, sorry. Yes, if you can pass when what you've written there, Willie, we'll look at adding that as a recommendation. Chair, if you're happy, we can always seek clarification from Transport Scotland about investment on the 77.
Yeah. I'm happy to do so, writing as chair, so... I'll just go through the rest of the recommendations, and we'll make that recommendation 4. Is that okay, Claire? Mm-hmm. Yep, getting nods. So, note the update on Trans-Pennine Express West Coast Mainline rail services. 2, note the update on the Grand Union train services. And 3, note the update on the Stranraer rail line. And 4, the wording. Do you want to read the wording out, Claire, if Willie's got it?
Yeah, I haven't got the exact wording from Willie, but basically it's for the chair.
Seek clarification from the Scottish Government on the investment for the A77 with recognised parity to the investment being made by the UK Government on the A75.
I think board members in agreement. Yeah, getting nods in the room. No dissent online, so happy today. Okay. To note that action. So now move on to agenda item 13. Any other business which the chair may decide is urgent due to the need of a decision. I have one urgent item of business today which is confidential, and it will be taken after item 14, which is another confidential item. So all I would like to say is To the observers and members of the public, I thank you for your attendance at today's meeting. It is recommended that the members of the board agree to consider these items of business in private and exclude the press, members of the public and observers from the meeting in terms of paragraphs 1, 6, 8 and 9 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Are we happy to agree, board members? Yeah.
Action to move.